Here, let's start with this. Not the 20-year-old sitting in the Audi lecturing people again. He's paid by the DNC law. This is my favorite guy.
If you don't vote for Biden in 2024, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do.
This is my favorite guy because he's just like, he's like a woke TikToker that the DNC was like, this is our best soldier. The DNC was like, remember that thing that we did where we got like Olivia Rodrigo to be like, hey, you should get vaccinated? And it didn't really work that well, but like it doesn't really matter. We really like having the TikTok Zoomers be like, you have to vote for the Democratic Party and just like make condescending videos. That is the greatest way to get boomers out to Pokemon Go to the polls. And the greatest way to get Zoomers out to go to the Pokemon polls or to Pokemon Go to the polls is basically doing the same thing, but with a Zoomer. With a middle part. Wait, let me start from the top.
If you don't vote for Biden in 2024, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do. You're going to have to explain to millions of women across the country why there's a national abortion ban and they no longer have the constitutional fundamental right to an abortion. You're going to have to come to me and explain to me why the nearly $1 trillion we've invested in climate change over the last 3 years for my future is gone, wiped away, just like that.
I mean, he's saying that, but it's like, Brandon is the president currently. You know what I mean? The abortion ban came into effect under the Brandon administration. And also, like, all of the protections against the abortion ban have been conducted in both southern states and red states and blue states alike by either directly voting in ballot measures or by blue state legislatures and blue governors responding to the Democratic calls from the population. They really got to change this, man. They have to change the strategy of like, you have to vote for us because the other side is much worse. I mean, it's true, right? Like it literally is true. It's not false. I don't think anybody goes, the Republican Party is better than the Democratic Party. I am Texas. That is all anyone says in Texas. The problem is like, I think a lot of people think defensive voting is the best possible way to get people out to vote. And that's not the case. Like, I think we should definitely try to do offensive voting. Like, vote for something rather than against something. I hate that the only way that Americans vote in this country at this point is like because they're fearful of the other. They're fearful of the opposition. And this goes for the Republican Party as well. The Republican Party at least like offers something. And the thing that they offer usually is like protection for, made up things like gun control. I guess that's still defensive voting on their end. Yeah, no, both parties are offering. Both parties in the United States of America are only offering defensive postures against the other. It's only about making sure the Democrats don't win, because if Democrats win, what do? They're going to fuck up the economy with socialism. They're going to take away all your guns. They're going to make your children gay. They're going to forcibly do abortions to you, especially if you're a white Christian, right? And then on the Democratic side, there's a little bit more truth to the defensive voting measures where we say, if you don't vote for the Democratic Party, then the Republicans are going to take away your rights, which is true. They're going to make it even harder for you to vote if you're black or brown, which is also true. And that they're going to give every child a gun, which, isn't fully true. It's a little bit of an embellishment, but, not far beyond the pale. And both are defensive voting postures. It's like lesser evil voting, which, in my opinion, diminishes the enthusiasm that either side could potentially have. Nobody believes in their party. Nobody really believes in a figure that they legitimately think will make their lives better. Like, we've lost touch with that reality. We lost touch with the reality that like our politicians on either side of the spectrum are ever going to do right by us, are going to materially improve our lives. So we just kind of vote in the only direction that we know, which is maybe the opposition will get hurt. Like, we'll own the cons, or the conservatives are like, we'll own the libs. Inherently reactionary. And of course, the byproduct of this is the ratcheting effect as our democratic institutions are crippled, destroyed, eviscerated. They're democratic in theory anyway, but like whatever theoretical democracy we have is further diminished every single time Republicans gain power. And then the Democrats don't do enough to claw back that regression. And it's not good. I'll just say it like this. It's not looking too good, folks. I'm thinking it's looking bad. I do personally think that you give the game away when you openly state a year out when there is a presidential candidate a year out from an election where 75% of his own party's members, like the most loyal people, are saying, we got to replace this guy with like historically low approval ratings and very little popularity in his own party is like forcibly propped up, and the people go, hey, let's not change the candidate to a more popular figure that could unite the base. Let's stay the course with this guy who is like 800 years old and risk losing to Trump. Let's do that. And if you don't demonstrate fealty to the Democratic Party, if you don't ask for concessions at the very least, if you don't try to extract concessions from your elected representatives, including the fucking president, by protesting in the streets and saying that you're not going to vote for Brandon ever again unless he changes things, right? If you don't do any of that, or if you do things like that, you're actually hurting his chances. It's like, brother, am I on the team or not? Because if I'm on the team, you got to sometimes be like, well, here are the things that I've done for you, and here are the things I plan to do for you. And I hear your demands, and I think that they're reasonable. Yes, I think we have all the power here on the Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza, and maybe we shouldn't do that. And obviously, for me personally, like I would want my elected leadership to have the moral disgust for doing ethnic cleansing and want to put a stop to it, even if it was popular. Like, even if like Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign had like 90% approval, right? I would want my government to say, no, that's not allowed. That's really fucking gross that you're doing that, right? I want them to demonstrate courage. I want them to expend political capital to do the right thing. But even beyond that, we don't even need to make that mental calculus, because in a couple very important demographics, specifically young voters, and also the Arab Muslim voter coalition in a place like Michigan, which is an important state, you have Joseph Robinette Brandon doing the exact opposite of what he's supposed to be doing to maintain his popularity. The majority of Americans demand a neutral United States to be a mediator in the conflict. The majority, the overwhelming majority, way more popular than like unconditional support to Israel, way more popular than obviously support of Palestinians. The overwhelming majority of Americans want a ceasefire. These are all incredibly, profoundly popular positions to take. So why is the Brandon camp not even doing the not politically courageous move, but the politically expedient move, the smart move? It makes no sense. But like I said, having the DNC repeat the same exact fucking smarmy bullshit, you have to vote for us, otherwise the other side is much worse. But also, when you vote for us, we're not going to fucking do the things that we claim we're going to do to like scale it back, to rein these things in. Well, that's not a great proposition to consistently, improve voter turnout. You got to give people something. I can't be eating broccoli all the time, dog. You can't be serving me broccoli all the time. Sometimes you got to give me dessert. You got to give me a little meat on the side. And the Democratic Party is not even broccoli. It's a shit sandwich. You know what I mean? This perspective did not work anyway. It didn't work in 2016. And I'm saying this as someone who participated in it. I didn't bully people, but I told them that, yes, Hillary is the better option. I was right. Hillary is better than Donald Trump. At the end of the day, obviously, Roe v. Wade would not have been tackled, but there were also missteps in the Democratic Party in that situation. Certainly, something that we must consider. RBG not being forced to retire under the Obama administration when she had like cancer 100 times already as a 900-year-old vampire was ridiculous. Not allowing some level of a constitutional crisis to occur under the Obama administration, like to forcibly push through what was just something that the Trump administration did when they appointed a Supreme Court justice. Like, could have done that. We didn't do that. Also ridiculous. There's so many other things that the Democratic Party has done historically that I'm obviously very frustrated with. And when we're looking at electoralism, I'm going to put my electoralist hat on. I'm a DNC guy now, okay? There's politics and there's policy. You got good policy and you got good politics. The Republican Party, at the very least, does good politics, but bad policy. Their policy solutions are fucking awful. Their policy provisions are devastating, oftentimes deadly. But at least they do good politics in the sense that they do everything they can to claw on to power. The Democratic Party ostensibly is supposed to have good politics and good policy. The Democratic Party is supposed to push for good policy at the very least, which it claims to do when the election time comes around. Doesn't really pursue the good policy, though, to the lengths that it's supposed to. But the Democratic Party has dog shit politics. They don't want to win. They don't fight like they want to win. And it's very, very, very frustrating. But then turning around and just like demanding that you just vote for the Democratic Party. I mean, this is not a good way. This is not a good way to pursue a broader electorate at a time when your president is historically unpopular. It makes no goddamn sense. I got to be honest, there's just one party and their only interest is capital. Exploitation is the only goal. And both sides are willing to harm the people to achieve their goals. No, I agree with that. I mean, I do. I think that the Democratic Party, if it was a real labor party, should at the very least push for anti-capitalist measures, right? Democratic Party, on the other hand, has rarely ever done so. When we talk about the pivotal Obama administration's achievement, not on foreign policy, but on domestic policy, when we talk about the ACA, the Obamacare, the only part of Obamacare that was not a direct cash transfer to the mediators within the insurance industry was forcing them to no longer deny people for any kind of conditions that they had prior to acquiring insurance. That's crazy. That should have already been legally regulated, like that from the jump. Like the fact that pre-existing conditions was a reason to deny health care to some people is so crazy that many people now don't even know that used to be the reality. When you tell people that in the United States of America, our insurance companies used to deny health care, like the right to even purchase health care if you had a pre-existing condition, is so laughably and comically evil that people go, that's not real. Shut up. God, I hate when people make stuff up like that. That's crazy. That in and of itself was a anti-capitalist initiative, I guess. But that came with another cash transfer directly, with subsidies that directly came from taxes and from the federal government to the insurance industry. None of that actually harmed the profits, is what I'm saying. Because the only way to unironically push for anti-capitalist measures is not by improving the profit margins of shareholders, but instead actually forcing companies to take the initiative, forcing companies to reduce the profit margins, reduce their profit margins. That's the only way. It's completely unacceptable.
You're going to have to explain to your friends and your family why there's mass deportation camps set up around the country, why we're mass deporting immigrants.
That's another thing that he's mentioning, that the Democratic Party also kind of continued, not to the same degree and to the same severity, but they did continue it. Isn't the important part the degree and severity, though? That's a great question. I do believe that the Democratic Party, no matter what, is always going to be marginally better than the Republican Party, right? I agree. That's the truth. However, let's say there is a genocide happening. If one side's opinion is that we should only kill 50% of the Palestinians, and the other side's opinion is that we should kill 100% of the Palestinians, yes, one side's opinion is better than the other side's opinion. However, there is a third option there, which is, how about no genocide? My point is, the Democratic Party should push a severe, strict, red line backed, no genocide policy. And people that come to me and say, well, you're fucking wrong, and you should shut the fuck up and vote for the Democratic Party and never demand any concessions from them, are ridiculous. They are ridiculous, unserious people. It blows my mind that people so callously sit there and go, well, I guess you're off to the camps then. Muslims that don't want to vote for the Democratic Party basically betray the severity of the situation, and they basically openly admit that they don't really give a shit, you know? Shut the fuck up and vote for me is not the position you should be taking. You should be aligning with the Democrats that are saying, I can't do this anymore. We have to fucking put an end to this. And you should be smiling and dialing, not the rest of the Democratic Party's vote of support, a base of support, but smiling and dialing your congresspersons, smiling and dialing and protesting on the streets with the rest of the Democratic Party's important constituencies to enact concessions, to extract concessions from the Biden administration. Moshi moshi, oro, Biden sama, that sort of thing. Biden sama, no more genocide, please. For the record, I do believe that pressure campaign does work because the Democratic Party is supposed to be more responsive to the needs of its base. And they are to a certain degree. I mean, the Republican Party's base is never going to demand an end to the ethnic cleansing in Gaza. They're never going to do that, and the Republican Party knows that, and that's why they can get away with saying incredibly vitriolic shit and maintain a policy that is pro-ethnic cleansing. But the Democratic Party ostensibly in this two-party structure, in this duopoly that we exist in, is supposed to listen to your demands. We are supposed to be the anti-genocide party, right? So yeah, if there is a marginal difference between the two parties, then it's the Democratic Party's position and its job, it's its responsibility to show you why there's a difference. And you can do that in two ways. One, you can do that by actually responding to the needs of your constituents, okay, demonstrating moral courage, maybe even expending a little bit of political capital from time to time. Not in this circumstance. Political capital is not even necessary in this situation because it is profoundly popular, broadly popular. And it never would have happened if people didn't consistently keep advocating for a ceasefire. That would have never happened. That broad popularity and the needle moving would never happen if we did not have independent outlets, if we did not have outlets like TikTok, social media, and the like pushing for the correct position on this, the moral position on this, in spite of what the historic popularity has looked like for Palestinians. Would have never happened. And now that we're actually there, now that it is a broadly popular position, the fact that the Biden camp is not acting on the desires of its elected, or of the population that elected and put him in power, is fucking ridiculous. It's bad policy and it's bad politics. Unacceptable. And the same principle goes for using eminent domain and pushing to continue Trump's border wall, blasting through the roadblocks on an incredibly reactionary, otherwise silly idea to capitulate to the white nativist immigration red herring as though this is something that we have to do. After you ran against it, makes no sense. What are we doing? The Republicans are never going to turn around and go, oh yeah, Brandon did build the border wall, so I guess he is better than Trump on that. Trump didn't build the border wall. Or no one's going to turn around and go, yeah, actually, I'll hand it to him. He's doing a great job on immigration. No, because it's already a red herring to begin with. It's not a real problem. Immigration has never been a problem in the United States of America, and it will never be a problem in the United States of America. Immigration is the backbone of the American economy, and the two-tier immigrant system and the two-tier labor structure that we have here, okay, that is inherently incredibly exploitative for those undocumented immigrants has to change, but not in the direction of like stopping migrants from coming into the country, but by offering the migrants into this country free passage and an opportunity to naturalize. Make that process legal. That, of course, would make our agricultural production more expensive, would make the poultry production more expensive, obviously, and we can't have that because that would eat away at the profit margins of capital owners who feed both the Democratic and the Republican Party. That's the real situation. Anyway, let's watch what else he has to say.
You're going to have to explain to everybody why the Trump administration is appointing federal judges to make sure he can overturn any election he wants. You're going to have to explain why the DOJ, the FBI, and the Department of Education are all gone, gutted. Can you do that? You're going to take all the...
You can't tank the economy just to be good to people? Wait, I'm sorry. Do you think I'm talking about this from a morality perspective? Because do you think that if you are a leftist, don't you think that that exact same argument extends to labor unions? Do you think the economy would be worse overall if labor unions were able to extract concessions from capital owners and actually eat away at the profit margins and have this not actually transfer, the cost not actually transfer to the consumers, but instead take away from the profit margins for shareholders? Because the exact same situation exists for undocumented labor as it does for documented labor. The overwhelming majority of documented labor, just like the entirety of undocumented labor, is not unionized. 90% of the American labor force is non-unionized, allowing immigrant labor to come in and have the opportunity to naturalize, and also on top of that, have the opportunity to unionize alongside the documented labor force would be greatly and profoundly beneficial, would increase the purchasing power of the average American, would create a political system where there was a mechanism of pushback for the Democratic Party, workers' councils, workers' coalitions. You would be able to arrive at least marginal changes towards that beautiful social democracy that you look at in European countries. Are there more pros than cons to unions? Of course. Of course there are more pros than cons to unions. Here, I'll give you an example. According to the NLRB, empirical evidence suggests that labor unions end up increasing wages for unionized employees and real benefits, real wages, including benefits, by 10%. But across the board, labor unions actually have a profound effect on individual sectors. It ends up raising the bottom price point for all employees. 20% for the immediate contract on average, 10% for the entire sector, 10% for the entire economy. Why am I saying that? Well, turns out this is why Sean Fain says UAW stands for you are welcome. The UAW bump has come to Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai. Did the Democratic Party do that? Fuck no. The UAW did that. Labor unions did that. Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai are raising their wages. Why are they doing this? Well, because they have to remain competitive. So even without sectoral bargaining, even other parts of the industry see an increase in their fucking salaries as a consequence of trying to maintain a competitive wage structure. If labor unions were not so successful at least trying to get the bare minimum fair profit extraction clawed back from the capital owner would not spend billions of dollars every fucking year to eviscerate labor unions. American individualism, American exceptionalism, and American capitalism is a cancerous trifecta that ends up hurting American citizens. It ends up hurting the American economy. It ends up hurting everyone globally, but certainly even Americans here. And people cannot wake up to that reality. They cannot. Partially because they are sedated with commodity fetishism. Partially because they are told a lie, reinforcing the capitalist dogma from birth, from every fucking institution that has been propped up by capital owners, all the way from Common Core, all the way from your schooling, all the way up to, not state-sponsored, but still functionally operating as a state entity, the mainstream media, the corporate-backed media. But capitalism is good and just and the best, and everything else, do not even think about that. Do not even think about an alternative. And if you think about an alternative too hard, well, then maybe you're a little bit radical. Maybe you're dangerous. Maybe you're scary. An example of that you have seen with the way that all of our organizations, all of our institutions, all of the people in powerful positions are currently having an incredibly hard time trying to scale back and rein in all of the pro-Palestinian sentiment that they hear from younger generations. They're losing their minds. They're like, we have to censor this stuff. We have to punish people for defending the humanity of Palestinians. We have to do everything we can because it's outside of the neat confines of liberal monoculture, what we consider to be permissible, what we consider to be appropriate to talk about. It's gross, really fucked up. And you're seeing it happen. You're seeing it happen on that situation, and you will continue to see it happen in every other aspect of our lives as well.
It's clear to me. Look, even if you don't like Joe Biden that much, that's fine. This is what I'd say to you. You can vote for the old guy with a stutter, or you can vote for the old guy with 91 felonies who sexually abuses women, who commits fraud, and wants to overturn elections. That's my message to you.
Bro, libs will whine about commie dictator massacres, but turn around and ride Genocide Joe. Yeah. First of all, I mean, Jim Crow Joe, Genocide Joe, doesn't just have a stutter. His brain is definitely fucking doo-doo. But the idea is, if we have two options, then your goal should be to fucking force the one option to do more, to actually be a positive force. Harm reduction only goes so far as an appropriate mechanism. Harm reduction only matters to people who do care. There's a massive amount of people who've been completely checked out. I just think that the expectation that everyone has to unconditionally vote for the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party shows very little in material gains for the very same groups, marginalized groups that we're talking about, the expectation that like, oh, if you're trans, if you're Latino, if you're black, you have to vote for Joe Biden. What the fuck else are you going to do? Well, guess what, dude? Those subsects, those voter blocks, some of them are very marginal anyway. They're leaving the Democratic Party. If you don't prove to these voter blocks that you actually have their best interest at heart, if you don't prove to them that you care with your policies, if you don't actually work to materially improve their lives, then at a certain point, they're going to check out of the process. Constantly left punching for the marginal group of individuals back and forth that just don't really have all that big of a say in the process anyway is so fucking profoundly stupid. Like the severity of the situation of like Trump being president will greatly undermine our civil liberties, and the severity of itself, the severity of a situation like that is instantaneously betrayed by the DNC when they forcibly prop up Joe Brandon and say, shut the fuck up. and vote for him. What are you going to do? Not vote for him? Yeah, the alternative is the Republican Party. It's like, yeah, okay, I understand that this is the most important election of our lifetime. Just like last election was the most important election of our lifetime. Just like last election was the most important election of our lifetime. But at what point do our institutions actually take some of the responsibility for putting up, one, dog shit candidates, and two, losing, and then three, continuing to do the same exact cycle of like, I'm just going to keep left bashing. I'm just going to keep saying like, you have to vote, shut the fuck up and vote, shut the fuck up and vote over and over again. And slowly but surely, what? We just like diminish the active participants who just completely check out of this process entirely because they feel like nobody really has their best interest in mind. That's what we're going to do.